How can you take months, if not years, off of your startup journey? Welcome to Borrowed Time. I'm Janine Lang, startup coach, author, and entrepreneur. Knowing that we learn more from our mistakes than we do our successes, I'm interviewing successful business owners and asking them, what are some of the biggest mistakes that they've made? What did it cost them? And most importantly, what are some of the lessons that they had to learn the hard way? By sharing this with our listeners, I'm hoping startups will be able to take valuable time off of their startup journey. Now, today's guest is Chelsie Tamms, who's the founder of Lettering Works. Welcome, Chelsie.
Thanks so much for having me, Janine.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Please, Chelsie, start off by sharing, what is Lettering Works?
Yeah, so I'm a Chicago-based lettering artist and brand designer. So I'm the only business owner and person behind Lettering Works. And essentially, I help people express themselves using creativity. So this happens through art products like stickers, postcards, and souvenirs that feature my original artwork, and also through custom designs like logos and custom merchandise, and even consulting on creative marketing and strategy. So really helping people bring their passion and excitement to the forefront through visuals, whether that's a cool sticker that shows off something they're excited about, or working with them more in depth on bringing their business ideas and excitement to life.
Great. Well, speaking of passion, I hear the passion in your voice. So how did you find your inspiration for starting Lettering Works?
Yeah, I love this question because I actually won $10,000 in startup funding from my university when I was a senior. And it really helped just this dream of like building a business around lettering and what I love. And the really unique thing too was I knew nothing about business at the time. And I think it really was the passion and the excitement for the craft and the art and design that really helped me stand out against the other students competing. And it was that passion that was like sparked I need to find a way to make this my career. And I was essentially able to bypass the corporate world and just build this business from the ground up. So 2026 will actually mark 10 years in business for me. And I continue to just really try to center that creativity, lettering, and passion, and use all of that energy and fuel to pour into other businesses and opportunities to kind of share that with the world.
Yeah, well, congratulations, first of all, on that contest. Oh my goodness, what a great vote of confidence that was for you to earn that money and to have that little foundation financially when you started off. That was, I'm sure helpful. And congratulations on 10 years. What a great success story that is, because as you know, you beat the odds. The odds are that most small business will fail within the first 10 years. So that is a huge, huge milestone.
Thank you so much. It does feel exciting and like a bigger one. And as you said, so many small businesses do fail. And I think that's just the nature of it. And it's the nature of not knowing at times what you want to do, but having that clear passion and goal and like figuring out and working through a way to make it happen is definitely possible. So I hope to be an example for others who have that passion for whatever it is that they love.
No doubt, no doubt. And as you say, it really is that process of figuring it out, because what you've just shared is you don't have corporate experience. When you started this, you were fresh out of school. This was your first venture into the working community, into the work life. So it was a lot of that figuring it out. So I suspect that you made, like all of us do, some mistakes along the way. What was one of the biggest mistakes that you can think of, Chelsie?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to say I think it's natural to make mistakes. So that's going to happen. And so many times we do have to figure it out the hard way or on our own. But the great thing about sharing these is hopefully it prevents people from making these same mistakes themselves. I would say my biggest business failure or mistake was hiring a bookkeeper to manage my monthly books. And I kind of want to dive into why that was a mistake, because for some people, that is not a mistake at all. It's one of the best things that they can do. But for me, I received the advice to outsource more in my business. And at that time, I felt like I was doing everything right. I was going to hire the bookkeeper, found somebody who was local, opted for woman owned, made sure I was paying what felt like a fair wage, all of these things. And really, essentially, it ended up costing me just under $3,000. But it also marked this point in my business where I just kind of lost control over understanding my numbers. And I ran into cash flow issues for the first time in my business. And I missed things like subscription prices going up and the service and like the wasn't exactly the quality that I was hoping for. And it just wasn't this convenience, this thing that like everyone tells you or everyone had been telling me, like, you need to do this. So, just kind of in short, it just wasn't like the right move for me and my business. And it was something that I felt I should do, or just got all this advice like, this is the path to success. This is the one way. You can't be successful unless you do this thing. And we hear that all the time. I think we're hopefully going to be on the other side of that kind of bubble bursting of this like get quick rich schemes and these promises that people are making. But it can be the little advice too, like hire a bookkeeper. That's how you know you've made it. And for me, it was just kind of the opposite. It just pulled me in a direction that wasn't right for me and really like cost me a lot.
You're right. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Chelsea, because you're absolutely right. Startups here all the time. Your business will reach a point where you have to start letting go. You have to start delegating. And you're absolutely right. Bookkeeping is one of those things we often talk about, that it's the administration that we can start to let go. And thank you so much for sharing openly, because so many people learn the hard way that delegation doesn't mean that you're directing that activity completely off the radar, right? Off the grid. So, how do you delegate and still keep a pulse on the finances? Because, as you mentioned, then if it's completely off your radar, then you don't see the expenses creeping up and up and up, or the implications of some of your maybe poor estimating, right? Where the profits go down and down and down. So, what's that right balance between freeing yourself and still maintaining a pulse on the finances of the business? Any specific learnings around that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it really varies by person. So it makes me think of like myself was somebody who had a pretty good sense of my numbers. Maybe I could get better at tuning into them, but I was pretty on top of things in terms of keeping track of my expenses and my income and like looking at it on a weekly basis. I think even back in the day, I would look at it at more of like a daily basis and kind of realize that's a little too intense, maybe not providing like the support that I needed. So for me, I was like really hands on in it. And so it was told to me, like, delegate this, it'll make your life easier. And it didn't work for me because I needed that hands on involvement. So I'm one case that, like, that is the way that I stay in the business. I understand what's coming in. I can kind of subconsciously interact and see, oh, this is kind of going down. I need to do something differently. So it was kind of my way of just like understanding how the business was working. Now I can think of another example of somebody who's like, bookkeeping overwhelms me. I do it at the end of the year. I don't look at it at all. That might be a scenario in which outsourcing it would actually be really supportive and helpful because you'd be able to check in with your numbers on a monthly basis or weekly basis or whatever you come up with. So I think really like part of the lesson there was learning that you have to know yourself before you take any of this advice in. Are you somebody who needs help with the numbers? Are you somebody who enjoys it? And I think because I'm an artist, a lot of people assume like you can't be good at numbers. You can't control this part. This should be the first thing you get rid of because you probably don't know. And while that is true for a lot of artists, my situation was a little bit different. And I felt like I didn't realize until afterwards how much I was relying on those numbers and how much looking at them kind of influenced, mostly in a positive way, of, oh, I need to course correct. I need to reach out a little bit more this week. Or, you know what, I'm doing pretty well. I'm going to take a break. Like I deserve a break in here sometimes too. And looking at those numbers and that data was really what influenced me to be able to make those decisions. So in the process of outsourcing, I kind of took this approach of like, you've delegated it, you can't be involved in it. And that was the wrong choice because it, as I said, kind of slowly things things kind of got out of hand in terms of like, oh, I usually could tell and like take this action more preventatively. And basically what happened with the cash flow was, oh, I'm running up against like, okay, this credit card payment's due and this money isn't in yet. And I was able to solve it pretty quickly by just looking at open invoices and saying, who can I reach out to? And asking that kind of question of, okay, if I need money today or tomorrow, how do I get it? And that's something that I wish would have happened a little bit earlier. So it really varies by person. Like, how do you interact with your business? Like, what stress level do numbers bring to you personally, to your business in general? Do you need somebody to kind of help guide you through that and get you to like this standard, which the standard's just set by yourself. So it's like, where is your comfort level and how much support and help do you need to be at a place that you feel good about? And some people need lots of hand holding, and other people need no one to get in their business because it will take them away from their vision and how they want to do things in a way that works for them.
Absolutely. I love that advice because you're right. It's so dependent on the individual. And it starts with that self awareness of what are my strengths? What are some of my weak areas? And you're right. Somebody who isn't, it's for which finance isn't their strong point, then maybe delegation is the right answer. But for you, when it's in your strength and your wheelhouse, then it makes more sense because it's efficient and it's almost what you're describing is almost like trying to drive a car and now giving up the steering wheel, throwing that out the window. I mean, that really is your pulse to help you navigate that whole business, knowing your numbers, or at least from your perspective. So knowing what your role is in that business, what it should and shouldn't be, particularly at that point in time, I'm sure of your business, it was just giving you really good feedback in making sure that you're managing that cash flow. So that's a great advice for sure. I'm just curious, what did that cost you in terms of time, first of all?
Yeah. So, on one hand, of course, it freed up some of my time, but it also added a lot of stress. So, on the other hand, it just like took me out of my business for nearly 6 months. So, I paid roughly like $3,000 to this bookkeeper over that time and just like kind of let go of all those things. And I think the real cost there was that I like lost control for 6 months. And I don't mean that just in the sense of like it went too crazy, but it just really like got me off course. And I think there was a bit of a ripple effect after that. But I really see that 6 months as the part that was like most intense in terms of negativity of like, this is just getting me off. And I think on the other hand, like it very much motivated me to figure it out after that, which is why I don't think it necessarily had a negative impact of more than 6 months or years, because I course corrected from that like intense moment and so much happened at once. But it just really was a moment where I found like this is pushing me in the wrong direction. Like if I wouldn't have kind of checked in a couple times, I think it could have been a lot longer than 6 months. So I was lucky in the sense that I kind of caught it and realized like this isn't working soon enough. But 6 months is still a long time. I mean that you it doesn't take long to drive your business into the ground. And I think that's also why so many businesses fail in those first 3 years, 10 years, 5 years, what have you. And so you really have to like know your business and be in tune with like what you can do to make it work. So that's why to me, even 6 months is a huge amount of time and loss, even though it feels small in the grand scheme of 10 years.
Oh no, that is big for sure. So thank you for sharing that. And you're right, time is only one element. It's also the stress. And you have to feel like you're in control and on top of the business and not knowing the finances, especially when it's in your wheelhouse and your strength, then obviously that's really one of the tougher lessons and gifts that you got out of that experience for sure. Yes. Well, certainly there was some pluses. Is there any other lessons that you wanted to share out of that?
Well, I think just to share transparently too, like one of the things that it cost me was I missed an estimated sales tax payment for the first time. And I think maybe the lesson there is more just like when you do delegate, if you choose to do that, like understanding who's responsible for what. The penalty fee was pretty small. So like that wasn't necessarily the issue as much as it was this like frustrating feeling of like I'm losing control, like I don't know, I don't have this same ownership and involvement that felt like really right for me. So like this all really happened just because I thought I was supposed to outsource, and it was presented like it was the only option if you wanted to grow and truly be successful. So I think the biggest like lesson and kind of like gift in all of this was just like this realization that I could be successful without outsourcing bookkeeping, but without like outsourcing or doing any of the things that people are like, you have to do this. This is the only way. Like there are times where I think we should listen to that and evaluate like, is that the right way? Is there another way? Does that make sense for me? But really, since like parting ways with the bookkeeper, I've like just regularly carved out this time, like anywhere from as small as 5 minutes to 15, 25 minutes each Friday. And like I've kept my books organized and clean. So that was definitely a lesson and a benefit of like if nothing else, just kind of doing it out of that spite almost of like, this didn't work before. I'm not going back to that. Like, I'm going to make this work. So it was a sort of motivation. And I think like that also makes me very committed to the practice because like this expensive mistake, this bookkeeper who didn't meet my expectations, that was just like part of what kind of fuels me to say, okay, there's another way you can figure it out. And I think that's the beautiful thing about business in general is like it's your business, it's meant to serve you. So how do you make that work? And then I guess just like kind of the bigger lesson overall was just realizing like not all this advice that you receive, even listening today, if you're listening and you're like, that doesn't resonate with me, like
Yes.
that's fine. You can take what serves you and what works for your unique goals and situation and business and like just recognize when it doesn't and like try to tune into that more than like absorbing all this advice and trying to do all the things because there's so much great information out there and there's also a lot of not so great information out there. Maybe the information itself is fine, but it's not great for you. So it's just really important to spend the time and take the time to like get to know yourself so that you can be intentional. So for me, that looks like just intentionally being a one person business. And like since then, I've really enjoyed the perks that are like meant for me and continue to just build this business around my lifestyle, which there was a lot of negativity around that when I was starting. Like, you can't, this is just a job. If it's just you and you don't outsource and you don't grow, like that's not a business, that's a job. And I like very much disagree with that now. I've kind of settled into like what works for me. And I'm honestly just more okay with doing things the way I want and the way that I know works best for me. And then also making mistakes and just being okay with, rolling with it and learning from them and like understanding that they will happen. But how do we prevent them as much as possible so we don't get those frustrated feelings or those like sad feelings around our business. Like we want our businesses to support us and be happy and be sources of success and joy and support. So like how do we get more of that in our lives?
Yeah, I love everything you just said. There were so many goodies and so many nuggets in there. Starting with first of all, just your point around this is not a science, right? You don't get a user's manual here when you're starting your business. I mean, there's so much advice that you're going to hear, and you're absolutely right. You have to listen to it and then make your own decision on what's going to work for you. And whether or not you grow and become this large entity doesn't have to be everybody's aspiration. So you need to decide for yourself, what is your goal? How big or how small do you want this thing to stay? So other people might label that as a job or not a real business, but boy, that takes a lot of courage. Anybody that has walked in your shoes knows how difficult it is to build a sustainable entity, even if that entity supports one person or 100 people. There is still so much courage and so much work to be able to create that. So you very much are a founder or an owner of something. Nobody should take that away from you. So there's just so much goodness in what you just said. I just loved all those very valuable lessons. And very much it's a personal decision that somebody has to make. The decision to start a business is such an important one, but you're really the architect, right, of what that's going to look like at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. You're need to really focus on like your personal reasons for getting into it and letting that build the foundation because your business can take so many different shapes or forms. So making sure you're choosing one that fits your personality, your needs, your values, the things that you love, because I could easily make a whole business that's very successful doing something close to what I like doing, but my goal is always getting it closer and closer to what I really love doing the most. And I find that as we center in and really focus in on that, we end up having the greatest impact that we can personally have. So just really leaning into that and being okay with some of the bumps that it takes to get there to really build your unique vision.
For sure. I love that. And I love that you touched on values because there's going to be opportunities potentially to bring people on and to outsource certain tasks and redirect work to subcontractors, for example. But when their values are not consistent with your own, then there can be this conflict. Because when I was listening to you talk about that missed payment, I know for me, my heart just started beating faster. Like that was just that would be a trigger point for me. So if somebody doesn't have the same values or urgency or places the importance on deadlines the same way you will, then that's really going to be at odds, right? When there isn't that alignment there between who you might choose to work with, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, values aligned action make you just makes you feel better. So the more you can do it and the more you can strive for that. And I totally recognize that it's sometimes a luxury to be able to choose clients and choose opportunities that are perfectly values aligned. Like at some point, we still have to pay the bills, but that's definitely the goal. And I think it's really important not to lose sight of the goal as you're building your own business, your own career path, and what works for you.
You're absolutely right. And I love that you mentioned also clients, because we've all probably made that wrong mistake of taking on a certain client. And it even felt in our gut a little bit wrong. But as you say, you got to pay the bills, right, Chelsea? So sometimes there's motivations other than it feeling like a good partnership. But oftentimes we have to fire our clients. Of course, there's a subtle way of doing that in the consulting world. We just estimate their next project at a fee that we know that they would have absolutely no comfort paying. So there's clever ways around that. But many startups find that they have to, at some point, even come to terms with the fact that their clients, not all of them are aligned, and it's not part of their future vision, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you had that experience yet? We've need.
Yeah, I've definitely had times where I've had to realign clients or even just on like a lesser intense moment of realizing like, oh, I used to like doing this, but this isn't where my passion lies anymore. So having to kind of shift and also just evaluate the situation and say, is this worth this money in this moment? Do I need this? Do I want this? And like just understanding your relationship with your work and like how much what purpose it serves, I think, like how much it's giving to you, how much it's taking from you. And as you were saying that too, like the costs, right? The cost isn't just time and money, but it's the stress piece and your health. And that needs to be part of the conversation too. And there's times where you have to say no. And maybe it's not even the client's fault or your fault. It's just like we're not a good match. And so I think bringing that conversation to the table and saying, you know what, I'm not the best fit for this project. And sometimes that looks like pricing it higher because you know it's going to take more work to get there, more mental energy, more emotional energy. So it's something to involve in that equation and to think about of like what is this going to cost me, and that's how you build your business too and decide what are the pros and cons of a large business, a small business, your flexibility versus like rigidity and clients needing you at a certain time of the day versus any time, and that flexibility. And what do these things mean to you? Like what value beyond just your set of values, but like what value is it that you can sleep in if you want to, or spend time with family, or go to a doctor's appointment without having to ask a boss or check in? Like what do all of these things equal, and how do you build a business that have the right perks for you so that it doesn't matter how much money you make, but it matters like everything that you've gotten from this business that you've created.
Right. I love those examples because there's so many examples in what you just said about setting boundaries, about you're willing to do and not do, and when you're going to do it and not do it. And so many people make the mistake of saying yes to a client. And you're absolutely right. What it costs them is their happiness, or it's not aligned with the purpose. I love what you said earlier. If it's work that you're not passionate about doing, then you're going to be resentful every moment that you're delivering that project because you didn't say no at the beginning and set that boundary. And I know I've made that mistake personally. I said yes to corporate training, and then that just took me down a path. And one day I woke up and thought, oh my goodness, how did I run a corporate training business when I don't even like delivering corporate training? So it was, I didn't say no. So you're absolutely right. That's such great advice, Chelsea. Obviously, I learned that one the hard way too.
I think we mostly do. And there is a point where you have to learn some of the things the hard way, but it's just that the biggest takeaway I feel like is just that check in with yourself of like, are you actually happy? Like no one's looking. This is between you and yourself. Like what little actions can you take today to put you closer to that dream business or life that you're imagining? It doesn't have to be drastic. You don't have to fire all of the corporate clients, but how do you fill the next corporate slot with somebody who's a better fit, and then the next one with a better fit? And just like it's a long game. I feel like entrepreneurship, if you're in it for the long run, like it takes learning things the hard way, but also just asking yourself like what if it was easy? I love asking that question and really leaning into like what if I didn't overcomplicate this? What if I just took the path that felt easy for me and recognizing that my answer to that question is not going to be the same as everyone else's? So, a lot of times we kind of back ourselves into a corner and make it hard when it can be a bit easier. And I think the reality too is entrepreneurship, small business ownership is never going to be easy, but you're going to get better over time. So your experiences will come in to make the hard things more manageable. It's not going to make suddenly business ownerships easy to you, but like you know how to navigate the challenges, you know how to weather the mistakes and not be so hard on yourself, but just really evaluate how can I do better in the future and just keep that positive mentality going.
I love that. And it is very much a mindset shift. And as you say, we often need to give ourselves grace and not beat ourselves up when we do make those mistakes. And that's really where the resilience comes from, right? We know that we're going to, if there's 10 things you were going to try, maybe five from a marketing perspective will work, the other five won't. And you just have to learn from that, not beat yourself up for the five that didn't work, but just figure out what are those five things and keep doing what works. And it's an evolution, right? That's the message that I'm hearing from you. It's more of a evolution, one step as you're building more and more clients that are aligned, and eventually you get there. But it is a long term. If you've got that long term mindset, then that's going to keep you focused on the end game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a long game and worth focusing and worth evaluating and worth sticking to the course and just keep going.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that mistake you made. Obviously, lots of richness in the lessons that you learned from that. What's one of the most significant accomplishments that you're particularly proud of in the last 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I'm really proud to sell my stickers at the Field Museum, Chicago History Museum, Milwaukee Art Museum, and even O'Hare Airport, among other gift shops as well. But I think this is particularly meaningful just because it was such a large goal of mine to like scale my business and find revenue streams that really like accommodate my unique health needs and my unique goals. So like so many times it's like suggested to me like do in-person markets, like why don't you do this, like this is going to be the way to grow your business and it's going to be great. And the reality is I have scoliosis and had a spinal fusion surgery, so that path like isn't the right path for me. But I'm really glad that I've been able to create a career that is supportive and sustainable and just kind of pick the business model, pick the options, pick the clients and the opportunities that are the right fit. So it feels really special when one, they can be big and exciting, but two, kind of my path to get there was like my own way of getting there. And it works a bit better for me than like what kind of back to the same lesson with the bookkeeper. So many people have advice. They don't know your situation and your needs, interests, values, likes, all of these things. So, like, really being able to tune into that yourself and like follow your own path, I think that's truly the biggest accomplishment I've had in the 10 years.
Yeah, those sound absolutely huge. Wow. How did they come about, the opportunities with the museum? That's just, you're absolutely right. A different league in and of itself, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how it really got started was I started my business, like I said, right out of college in Central Illinois and Peoria, Illinois. And I was there for about 3 years building my business. So early on, started building some like community centric products because they really just didn't exist. And they found their way into the small airport. Peoria International Airport, as well as the Peoria Riverfront Museum, and saw like a lot of traction and success there, like in the community building, like Peoria centric product front. And so when I decided to move to Chicago in hopes of kind of scaling up my business and growing, I was able to look back on like what worked well in Peoria, what do I want to bring with me, what did I enjoy? And the short answer of that was museums and airports. So that became my like hyper focus moving here. Like, here's who I work with, here's who I want to work with. I've done it before, love to do it again. And because of having that clear tune into like myself and that clear vision, I was able to put that out there early on at some networking events, just meeting people in person. And that led to the right connections to meet with the Field Museum and later the History Museum, and then even later on the Milwaukee Art Museum. So it just kind of fell into place by like starting small, building on that experience and that same thing of evaluating like what works, what do I want more of, what do I want less of. And I did do some in-person different events, like starting out, like I did those markets and things, and they were very physically taxing. And like I did them because I thought that was the only option. I don't think those qualify as the biggest mistake because they were smaller and like I learned very quickly this was not for me. And it was just one in, one out kind of situation. So I think that's great. But like being able to evaluate those events and not say like this wasn't successful because it wasn't the
Right.
right event, but say, you know what, events are not for me, we're going to find a different way, committing to that, and then kind of staying on that path and building that the way that worked for me really kind of led to these like perfect dream opportunities, and like the helped me build the skill sets to really like fall into place when I had those meetings and said, I've had this experience, there's a gap here, can you help me figure out how to scale up, and like what do you need from me? And that's been evolving over time too, as needs change and as different opportunities come up as well.
Yeah, there's some great learnings that you just shared. And the first is, I'm so glad you mentioned that because you're dispelling that myth about certain channels and the need to be right a player in them. I often hear, I don't know if I can be on videos, right, and Instagram 5 times a day, and so it's really about there's different options for how you market your business. And so what I heard you say is you thought that you needed to be doing these in-person events, and there's more than one way to market the business. Again, it goes back to at the beginning, maybe we give ourselves exposure to many different channels, but at the end of the day, you have to figure out what fits your communication style. Some of us are writers and bloggers, and others are video and camera people. And so there's all different strengths that we bring. So what are the channels that match your skill set and your strengths, but also are a vehicle, a channel to get you to your potential clients? So that's such an important lesson to learn that, because we think at the beginning we need to be all things and all channels, and it's really about picking your spots. And the other great thing that I loved your lesson about is about really understanding. Actually, just let me give you an opportunity. Was there something that you wanted to comment about channels?
Oh no, I just 100% agree with that. Like just picking your channels, picking your lane, being okay with it, being okay with the loss of the perceived loss, I think is better than the real loss. If you don't want to use social media, don't use social media. You can find a different way. And just because you see people being successful on social media, honestly, it doesn't mean that you will be, because if you're fighting it tooth and nail the whole way, you're probably not going to find the same success. It's not the right path for you. So just echoing what you're sharing of like find what works for you, and it's okay if it's not mainstream or it's not the right way, because you get to make your own right way.
Yeah, I love that. And you're absolutely right. On social media, we tend to compare ourselves, right? So easily and detrimentally to other people, which is so not fair, because quite often we're comparing ourselves to people that have been running a business so much longer and just have different strengths. As you see, as you just said, it's such a personal decision, and you have to architect that business based on what your own strengths are. The other great tidbit that I want to pick up on that you said earlier was that success really started happening when you picked a niche. So you figured out in those first 3 years that you had some success with airports and the museums, that there was a fit there. And then you went deeper on that niche. And when that happens, of course, you've got a great story to tell, right? About the first airport and the first museum. And then it makes it easier with those great testimonials and experiences to be able to start to penetrate that niche even to a greater extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that once again doesn't work for everyone, but for me, that was like the key to succeeding, was really saying like, okay, I need something that can help build my confidence to go larger. And I think it would be kind of impossible to start at the biggest point. And I do that a lot with passion projects that I create, kind of dream up like what's the biggest, most exciting dream project. Okay, great. Put that away, set it aside for a moment, and go back like 5 steps, 10 steps, and like, what do I need to start today to push myself just a little bit closer to that? Is it researching a list of names of these dream companies? Is it for me being an artist, sketching out an idea of a future project I could work on with them? Is it creating a full blown passion project around that idea? Like one that I created was called Cool Beans, and it was a kidney disease centric awareness campaign that kind of blended a fictitious restaurant concept with all of this awareness. And like that got me to some of the dream clients and projects. And so it was really that moment of how do you start big and like go backwards and like niche down, but also maybe have a niche on the side because you can go in multiple directions, but making it manageable. You don't want to have 12 different niches because it's going to be hard to give all of those the time and attention they deserve. But you can play around and you don't, I think a lot of people, especially creatives, get really afraid of like, if I niche down, like I can't do anything else. It doesn't mean you can't do anything else. It just means that you're best equipped for that thing. And so many of those skills are transferable. So I would just encourage people not to be afraid of doing that. You can change your business model, you can change your business plan anytime, but definitely give it some time and stick with it and see if it works because things, as we both know, don't happen overnight. It's not magically going to be successful, but like give it a fair chance and be okay with changing if you need to.
Yeah, there's some great research that shows that overnight success happens in about 10 years. And when you think about Tesla, they only started turning a profit after 10 years. I could go on and on with examples, but you're right. There is that 10-year window to build that foundation, right? I've often seen and described the first 3 years were a hot mess as we're still sort of figuring out what's our product, what's our niche, what are we going to be doing. And then the next 3 years is really more that figuring out that focus and that offer, and then building repeatable processes, right? You had some success. Let's repeat. Let's figure out what channel, what market, what we're going to do. And then the last 3 years is really more that growth and really starting to see that success. And often we talk about that 10-year foundation of a mature business. Bolted onto that is the additional opportunities and innovation. I love what you just described because it's about thinking about what's that bold step, what's that next bold thing that I want to achieve, but then very practically you unpack that to say, what are the practical steps that I need to do? I need a plan, and then I need to work towards that to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Breaking things down to manageable tasks, I think, is one of the only ways to keep moving forward, especially if you're feeling stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, you've had so many successes, and I'm seeing just so many wonderful qualities that willingness to take those bold steps, the courage, but also seeing what's working and what's not working and paying close attention. So there's so much richness in what you shared today. Are there any other lessons or topics that we haven't touched on yet that you wanted to share?
I think we covered a lot. I really would just say, like, just as a reminder to like really consider your unique needs and skills as you're developing whatever your business looks like, and ask yourself too, like, what do you need your business to do for you to ensure that it is sustainable and meets your needs? Having a business isn't virtuous. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure happening right now with small businesses, and like so many small business owners whose businesses are not doing well feel this like need, like I have to keep this business open for the community or for whatever else. And I think at the end of the day, I kind of disagree with that. I think that it's really important that the businesses serve the business owners. And because if it doesn't, like they're pouring from an empty cup and it's not sustainable. I think that sustainability is just so essential. And so once you kind of figure out like, what do I need to get from this? Then you can kind of ask yourself those questions of like, what are you uniquely qualified to do that provides the greatest potential value so that your business can actually deliver both to your clients, but like also to you as the owner. So, like, really leaning back to that question of like, what if it were easy? Like, what if it didn't have to be so stressful and complicated? And maybe that means the business model is completely different from what you envisioned it to be. Maybe it's not a storefront or it's not something that has these high entry costs. Like, maybe it's a little bit more simplified. And yes, you're losing some of the like glamour of a beautiful storefront, but you might be be also saying goodbye to the stress that like you're up every night wondering, how are we going to afford this and how is this going to work? So really just using that as a guide for helping like decide what choices make the most sense back to like your values, your needs, your interests and your goals, and just knowing at the end of the day that like you're going to be the one who has the right answer, so you can take in all of the content and inspiration and advice, but that all needs to get processed through you and through your unique situation to make sure that it works for you. And like take whatever it is from something that you're listening to just like this, and like pick what piece you want to bring with you. It could be a way of presenting or a way of sharing or a way of talking about things that's totally outside of what the core message was meant to be, but you can take whatever you need from all of these experiences that you're having and pull it into your business in a way that always is adding and growing, and just yeah, leaning into what is right for you, and giving yourself permission to discard what's not working, giving yourself permission to opt out of a meeting or leave during a meeting. And there's nice ways of doing that. It doesn't mean this is your permission slip to be rude and do whatever you want, but like find a way to like get back on track, whatever that track looks like for you and however you want it to look.
For sure, I love that. And it's just hearing you talk, it's so important to know why you're doing that, right? Because if you don't know why and you don't have that compelling why, then you're not likely to stick with it. So you must have had an awfully, but I'm curious, did you have role models that started a business that, because for you to start this venture right out of school, so few people follow that path in life. So what gave you permission to start that business when you were beginning your career?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't come from a family of a lot of entrepreneurs. I feel like a lot do and kind of follow that and see that example. For me, what it really looked like was like being asked young enough, like what I wanted to do, and like knowing the answer was art, and kind of figuring out like, okay, how do you make art a career? Like, I know I want to do this. I'm one of those rare cases that when I was probably about 16 years old, I was like, I'm going to be a graphic designer. I'm going to work in advertising. This is it. And it was really just figuring out like, I have that answer. So what does that look like? And for me, I feel like what really happened was I had this clear, like, I'm going to work at an advertising agency. This is it. And because that was so clear, I did do some internships, even one before college started at an advertising agency, and then had like 4 summers of being an intern. And I think that didn't necessarily prepare me to like instantly become a business owner after graduating, but it was the combination of being like, I'm definitely going to do this. I'm going to own my own business someday. I don't know when, it doesn't matter when, but like I know I will. And I kind of compressed that like 5 year plan after college to like during college. And then it just kind of set me up for success. And like the passion was definitely what I like honed and figured out. And then as I was graduating and there was this student entrepreneurship competition, I came in with a totally different perspective than most of the people competing, because they were studying entrepreneurship and learning about business. And I was just like, I know nothing about business, but I know I want to do this. I had made a book, my first like self-published book as a student. And that kind of just like showed like, I'm going to do this. I don't know how. You can give me your money. You cannot give me your money. And like, I think that's the difference. And like if you can find whatever that is for you, of like what are you going to do regardless of if you get paid, start there, and then let's figure out how to get you paid and how to make that sustainable. And for some people, especially in the art world, it means intentionally keeping your art a hobby and having some other source of revenue. And like that can be a way of doing a small business too. Like you don't need to just have your own business 100% into it. For me, it looked like going 100% in, one, because I had startup funding, which was fantastic. And two, because a lot of the jobs that people would say, you can always pick up a shift at a coffee shop. Well, I actually couldn't pick up a shift at a coffee shop because one of the requirements is lifting like 50-pound boxes. And that's kind of beyond what I can do with my back problems. So I found a way to figure out how am I going to make this work? And that motivation, I think, really fueled me to being like, we're going to make this happen. We're going to find a way. And I think at the end of the day, it kind of comes down to that, right? It's the mindset of, are you going to succeed, or are you maybe going to see what happens to you? And it's that commitment to finding a way that can enable you to be a successful business owner. And that takes all different shapes and forms. But at the end of the day, just committing, I think, is the biggest thing that you can do.
Absolutely. And finding what I love about what you just said is it all starts with when you discover that gift that you have that truly makes you happy, that you're so passionate about, that you love to do and you could do like all day long, and the time just flies by. Once you've landed on what that is, then how you use that gift is going to evolve, but then you know what that purpose is, right? What that's going to be about. And that's such a great starting point. I coach people that they know that they want to start a business and they have no idea what it'll be about, and they try to think of, what hat am I going to wear? Will I be a consultant, a contractor, a creative? No, start by figuring out what activity makes you happy, what is going to be at the core, and then the rest is going to flow from there. The other thing I want to pick up on, and again, kudos to you. Thank you for sharing that you've got obviously a physical ailment, your back issues. How do you believe that that shaped the path that your startup journey has taken?
Yeah, I think it's had a huge impact. I didn't really recognize it as much early on, even though I think subconsciously it influenced a lot of choices. Like, even back to I know that these markets aren't the right thing for me. So, like, at first, I would just try them or like try to just do a couple of them. But now I've reached a point where I'm just like, that doesn't work for me. So, when people recommend it to me, and people still do, and they do it out of a good place, but I
Yes.
can say, like, I actually can't do those because of just this physical situation that makes it a little bit more difficult to commit to this. And I think another thing, and this is a soapbox that I could be on for a long time as well, but like, markets are really expensive to participate in. And I don't think all artists calculate the time cost, the energy cost, the actual product costs, the entry fees, and all the things. So there's a lot of business numbers and such that go into that it isn't always the right fit for people, or you have to get really clear on what you need to get out of it. And for me, having some of these challenges and health issues, I have to get a little bit more out of it for it to be worth it. Like, I'm willing to have a sore back or like need to rest a little extra after certain events, but I have to choose those carefully because that's another cost that I'm kind of pouring into this. And sometimes people don't have that issue and they're like, I could stand for 12 hours. And if it
Yes.
means I can like get my business off the ground, I will be there. I'll be there early. I'll do whatever it takes. And I think that that's great, but knowing what kind of works for you or what needs you have, and that goes back to just that big lesson of, what do you need first, and then we'll build the business around it. I loved how you mentioned too, you're coaching and supporting people, because I got this advice early on as I was doing the pitch competition, but one of the judges said, like, you're clearly passionate. I can teach you the business side. I can't teach you the passion side. And I think that that's so true. And I've advised and mentored and coached people in the creative space as well. And if you're not passionate, like, I cannot make you passionate. Like, you have to find your passion. And then there's so many resources that you can be plugged into to kind of figure all of the other things out. But there's not a lot of ways that we can like spark your passion. I mean, you can take workshops and classes and like, but you have to like self initiate that and find what works for you. You can't go to a business consultant or a coach and say, make me passionate about starting a business. Like, that's the part that you have to bring to the table, and there's people that can support you in finding it, but it's kind of on you to figure out what that is and bring that spark.
For sure. Well said. Well said. You're absolutely right. We're all dealt a different hand in life, and we have to look at those strengths and gifts that we have. And certainly finding what we're passionate about, or recognizing what we're passionate about, that's always a safe core. Sometimes I hear, money, right? What's my $1 million idea? And we look at other people and think, I can run that business. That looks so easy. But unless you're picking something that is a passion, that is a love that you have, then it's just not going to be sustainable.
Absolutely. And I think sustainability is one of the most important things at the end of the day, because you don't want to burn out. It's happening left and
Yes.
right and everywhere. And so the more you can protect kind of your peace and your energy, the more you'll have to give and make an impact.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, you've got so many different strengths. My goodness, a huge creative side, plus this really strong business and number side. You truly have a combination of skills that absolutely has contributed to your success. So if people want to continue the conversation, Chelsea, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, anyone's welcome to reach out to me via my website, which is letteringworks.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram, and just welcome any connection, follow-up questions, and discussion. Love talking about all of these things and appreciate you having me on today, Janine. So would love to continue the conversation and connect with people if they feel motivated to do so.
Absolutely. Well, your passion is absolutely infectious. So no doubt there will be takers. So thank you again for joining us. So much tremendous value that you've given, Chelsea. Really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Great.